if you live with your parents in your late 20s or even early 30s, you're a loser. You're not successful. Why are you living still with your parents? Most American waiters will come to you while you're eating dessert and they will place the bill on the table and they'll say, but no rush. And I'm like, you're rushing me. It is very normal for parents to meet up on the playground after school, have a beer, glass of wine, or sometimes it's not even alcohol related. Sometimes, it's a cup of coffee while the kids play. When you become a mom, since you don't have those other things, right? That becomes your identity. We finish eating dinner and I'm about to grab my coat and he's like, no, let me do it. And in my head, I didn't think, oh, that's so sweet. I thought, I can do it myself. I never had a man putting a coat on me.
Hello, and welcome to another Dating Via Borders podcast. Today, I'm super excited to have Ana with me, a Spanish content creator from Valencia who moved to the US at 18 and is now married to an American with 2 kids. We're diving into all the nuances she's noticed since making the move, differences in lifestyle, mentality, and how both cultures approach relationships and marriage. Plus, we'll talk about something I don't cover as often, motherhood. Ana has a lot of insight on what it's like raising kids in the US versus Spain. A reel she did on this topic went viral and caught the attention of major media outlets. So stay until the end to find out why. Ana, it's great to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited.
Ana, I'm really interested to dive into the mentality differences that you've noticed since coming from Spain. You moved when you were 18. You've lived in a few different cities in the US. Where did you live in the US so people have an idea?
Yeah. So first of all, thank you so much for having me. I absolutely love your content. So I'm extremely excited because I can relate to a lot of things that the platform talks about. So thank you so much. And so just so the audience can get to know me a little bit better. So when I was 19, I moved to the US with a scholarship to run track at a Division I school. I was a long jumper and I moved to Akron, Ohio. Very random, but they did have a great track and field program. So I was super excited. I met my coaches actually in Italy at the European Championships under 23. A month or so before moving here. So that was really excited. It is, I feel like when people move to the US, they think about LA and New York, Boston, like big cities like that. So I've never heard about Akron, Ohio before. But yeah, it was super exciting, great experience. And then, after I met my husband, we got married. Then we moved to Buffalo, New York, because of his job. He coaches football. So it is, quite normal to move every couple of years. So we did that. We go into Buffalo, New York, very close to Niagara Falls. Beautiful winters, very hard. Don't recommend it. But now move back. And right now we are in Lawrence, Kansas.
Wow. Okay. So you've definitely, you've moved to places that are not on the map for a lot of expats, right? As you said, they think of New York, LA, those really, popular locations. And you did move quite a while ago. Now I'm really curious because I would assume that the mentality differences between Spaniards and Americans differ quite a lot. What were the biggest ones that you've noticed since moving?
I will say the first biggest culture shock related to mentality is when I moved here and I was part of the track and field team. It was a big shock, a positive one, because it taught me to be positive and competitive and, mentally tough, have this winner mentality. I always say that Americans have a very specific winner mentality. My experience with my teammates were that I can do it. I'm going to win this race. I'm going to jump farther. If you don't believe in yourself, who will? And I will always remember, it was my first week or second week on campus and I was talking with my teammates and we were talking about our personal records. I jump whatever 20 feet or whatever it might be, right? I run this fast and we were talking about our goals for this year. And I remember a couple that their goals were obviously not impossible, but I was like, wow, that's the difference is huge, right? Like, let's say that their personal best was 20 feet. Well, their goal was 21 feet, 5 inches, which is a lot in long jump, right? And my first thought was, there is no freaking way you're going to do it. Like obviously you don't say that aloud, but I was like, that is insane. And guess what? They did it. And it wasn't about me doubting themselves, because then I learned that it was me that I didn't believe in myself. So I was doubting them, because I would have doubted myself. And they just, it's the go big or go home mentality. Again, I feel like, I don't know, I feel like Spanish people, we are more go with the flow. I don't know, I feel like our society tells us that are opportunities, and, that next promotion, it is so limited that we don't believe in ourselves, but also I feel like Americans are always, it's like the other side of the coin, right? Like, I love it. And I love the mentality is, you gotta do it. You gotta work hard, let's get it. No rest is best. But again, now you have the other side of the coin where when you are working extra all the time and there's no rest and you can get burned out, like, is it worth it? And, but again, I feel like if you don't live in the culture for a long period of time, you don't really understand why they do things the way they do. And to me, I learned that the life in the US, even when they are younger, they are taught to work, even when they are really young, because why? University is really expensive. When they are 18, most Americans move out of the houses. So now they are on their own. They have to pay their own rent, their college fees. And that may be 20, 30 grand, 40 grand. There's, college in the US is super expensive. So they are taught to work really hard and make money, because once they move out, life is expensive. Health insurance is really expensive. They have to do it. And also this competitive mindset that they know that if they don't work hard, they won't get that promotion or they won't get that scholarship. If they don't do it, someone else will. So, it definitely taught me to go for it, to try new things, and that failing is okay and it's part of the process. But I've also learned to, hey, it is okay if we need to rest a little bit, right? Like I always tell, there was one of my friends, it was like, go, go, go. And I was like, hey, if you are preparing for a marathon, you're not running 24/7, right? You're running a lot of miles every week, but also resting and a good diet, sleeping is key for you to run better and have a healthier lifestyle. Like it is okay to rest a little bit. So, it is, I think it's a balance. And, that mentality can be really good, but you also need to learn to come down a little bit, pause and rest, which I think Americans sometimes have trouble with, again, because they are always go, 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 right? They always need the next thing, more money and a better job and the next promotion. So I would say that would be the main or the first culture shock that I experienced for sure regarding mentality.
Yeah, I really, really love that. And I completely agree with you. I think there's positives and negatives to both, right? The negative to the Spanish lifestyle is, of course, that people are a little bit too comfortable just coasting by and not really being like aiming for the big picture, not aiming to achieve anything. And the negative about the American culture is that, like, as you said, if all you're doing is focusing on achieving the next big thing, then at some point you're going to burn out and you're going to, start taking pills, which Americans do a lot. I've seen a lot of drug advertisements on TV, which has really shocked me, actually. And I think it's also about the priorities in life, because I feel like for a lot of people, priorities are changing now. And I've seen a lot of Americans move to countries like Spain because they're now yearning for that, and me included, yearning for that really relaxed, laid back lifestyle instead of chasing the next big thing. Because we've realized that's not great for our happiness and our mental health as well.
Definitely. I couldn't agree more. I think also part of why we as Spanish people are more laid back is because one, when you're 16, it is actually very rare for a 16-year-old to work. Whether, in the US, it is very normal for a 16-year-old to work at a grocery store, at an ice cream shop in the summer. But again, it's because they know the meaning of, hey, you are going to go to college. That is really freaking expensive. So you better start working and saving money, whether in Spain. It's not that college is for free because, we all pay through taxes, but it is very affordable. Healthcare is very affordable. So we I feel like we don't have that thing that it's, we have to work super really hard since we are 14, 15, 16 to save money. We don't have that pressure, right? And so I just think that with the Spanish lifestyle of less is more, we don't care that much about making money. I feel like we focus more on, hey, as long as my family is healthy and, I have a work-life balance, again, the less is more, comfortable, they are good. And so I think just the priorities are a little bit different, as you mentioned. And yes, I've seen a ton of Americans, and not just Americans, but British, Germans coming to Spain to look for a more relaxed lifestyle.
Yeah, the family conversation is interesting. I was staying with a couple of American friends, and they were talking about a cousin of theirs who is still living with their parents. And one of them was saying, but he's 18. How is this still possible that he's living with his parents? Being Eastern European, for me, it's a normal thing to do. I mean, what's the rush of moving out of your parents' house? And I imagine for Spanish people, because of the economic reason, but also because of the fact that there's less of a taboo with living with your parents. You don't have to rush out of the house as soon as you turn a legal age, go to college, get out, leave the rest behind. Now you're free as a bird. You don't have the same mentality, I feel like.
Exactly. Yeah. In Spain, it's the same as Canada. And I would say most European countries, as well as Latin America, we focus a lot on family. And, I've been here for 11 years and I've learned that this is my opinion, but I think that Americans put a lot of pressure on what is the true meaning of being successful. And I think for them, obviously, we're talking a little bit general, obviously not for everyone. But what I say is that for them being successful is one, not living with your parents, meaning if you live with your parents in your late 20s or even early 30s, you're a loser. You're not successful. Why are you living still with your parents, And also the marriage. So I feel like for Americans to be successful is, you get married young, you have kids. As long as you have that, you have a well-structured family, you are independent, you are successful in your job. There's people that right after college or even in college their last year, they are working already for a really good company. For them, that is successful. Whether it's Spanish people, yes, it is cool to make money. But again, I feel like the term of being successful in life doesn't revolve about your job, how much money you make, and more about family. As long as you have a, happy, healthy family, we're happy,
Everyone, just a quick note to say that while I love putting these podcasts together each week, they do take a ton of time and effort. So if you're enjoying the show, please make sure to follow on YouTube, Spotify, wherever you're tuning in, and give this podcast a 5-star rating to help it grow. This support really helps me keep improving the show's quality. Thank you, and back to the episode. Yeah, it's so interesting to listen to you. And yeah, of course, Americans are renowned for their hustle culture. Have you experienced this in other areas? I've heard, and I know from firsthand experience, that the dining out culture is quite different as well. So tell me about that.
Yeah, I would say one of the biggest culture shocks I had at first, and honestly, I still have it because I go to Spain quite often, and I'm always having reverse culture shocks, back and forth. But the way I can describe it is that when you dine in the US, you stay at a table for an hour and a half. Going past 2 hours is a little bit too long for them. It is very common to get your check while you're eating dessert. And I find this so funny because most American waiters will come to you while you're eating dessert and they will place the bill on the table and they'll say, but no rush. And I'm like, you're rushing me. You know what I mean? Let me finish my dessert and then come with the check. Now, in Spain, is the total opposite, right? You can sit at a table, lunch, dinners could be 2, 3, 4 hours. We actually, it's super interesting. We have a concept that it means, I'm going to tell you right now. So the sobremesa, okay, that is the specific term, that is the specific word, which means over the table, over the table, mesa. When you are done eating lunch or eating dinner, we do sobremesa, which means that you will stay at the table and you talk. You talk about anything you want. It could be politics. It could be, just catching up with life. And you do it usually with the coffee and dessert, or even after dessert, you get another coffee or you get a beer, a glass of wine. It is the art of, taking it slow, talking to each other and enjoying each other's company. That does not exist in the US because they rush you. Now, I do want to say, many people don't talk about why they rush you. And I have my personal opinion, and it's that American waiters are paid through tips, right? They have a base salary. It may be $2 an hour or $3 an hour. The rest of your paycheck comes from tips, which tips in Spain, not found, don't exist, okay? It is up to you. It could be 50 cents, €1, maybe 10% of your bill, okay? But it's not mandatory. It's not expected. Now, in the US, think about an American waiter. If he can have 3 tables in 5 hours instead of 1, they are going to make more money, right? Because most of the people leave a 20% tip. So think about all the extra money that the waiter is having 3 tables versus 1 or 5 tables versus 2. So yeah, they want you to come, eat, and leave, right? Whether in Spain, they have a flat base salary, it may be like €12 an hour, €15 an hour, I'm not sure. But the tip is not, again, expected. It's not, it's not part of the culture. So I think that might be one of the reasons, because I was like, why does this keep happening? Like, why are we rushing? And I think in the US is 1, part of the culture, 2, the tips.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember a time where I went to Spain and I left a tip, and the lady chased me down the street and she said, "You forgot your money." And I was flabbergasted. I'd never experienced anything like this before. And then recently when I was in the US, we went to a place and there was no server, and they just said, scan the code, order online. But the option to leave a tip was still there. And I'm thinking, but no one actually came to our table and we don't know what the food is like. And like, what are we tipping for?
Yeah, tip in the US, in my opinion, recently has gotten out of control. I'm a tipper. If I'm sitting at a restaurant, I understand that it is part of the American culture. I know that servers rely on tips. I'm going to tip. I always tip. Now, when you go through a drive-through because you get a coffee and a donut, or you're calling the place to pick up the food, like the food is literally waiting on the counter and you pick it up and leave, and they already have the 20%. You're like, interesting, right? Like, you did not serve me. Like, I didn't sit down. And so I think, it's getting a little bit out of control, to be honest. But I do want to say that if, someone from outside the US is hearing this episode and, they are coming soon to the US and they are dining at a restaurant to, please just learn about the culture, learn about the country that you're going to, and please tip the servers because they do work really hard, And again, their salary and their paychecks mostly come from tips.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I'm all for tipping someone for a good service, but it has gotten a little bit almost like a circus lately, because I had a friend and she was asked to tip. It was a robot massage chair, and there was the slot to tip a massage chair. So that's how out of hand it's getting here in Canada as well. So yeah, there's pros and cons to each. Obviously, good service, you're going to leave a tip for, but I agree with you. I don't want to tip someone for getting a coffee, something as simple as, takeout and those kind of things. What other lifestyle differences have you noticed while living here?
I would say the main one, socially, it is that your social life, Monday through Friday, especially if you are a parent and have a family, is pretty much non-existent. Social life is, reserved for the weekend. Whether in Spain, people are out and about, 24/7. Doesn't matter if you are a parent or not. You have a lot of social life Monday through Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. It is very normal for parents to meet up on the playground after school, have a beer, glass of wine, or sometimes it's not even alcohol related. Sometimes, it's a cup of coffee while the kids play. A lot of parents are part of running clubs, things like that, right? So I would say the social life, to me, it's been huge. Like, sometimes, I'm like, wow, it's been 5 days and I haven't seen my friends, or, and also I feel like the driving versus walking impacts what I just explained so much. You gotta drive pretty much everywhere unless you live in a big city like, LA, New York, where it's, easy to be out and about and you have public transportation, great metro subway system, but it is not the case in most states, and especially most families live outside the city in the US, right? You live in suburban areas. So I think the car situation is very, very inconvenient, especially, if there's a little bit of drinking involved, like you don't want to drink and drive either. So I think it limits a lot of your social life during the week for sure.
Yeah, I was just in Phoenix, and what really bugged me was that I couldn't just walk outside or take the public transit and go somewhere. I couldn't just explore the city. No, I needed to know exactly where I needed to go in order to take an Uber to get there. And, when I tell Americans that, a lot of people don't drive in Europe, that is a shock to them, because how can you not drive? If you're past the age of 16, you need to have your license. Otherwise, you're chained to your house. You cannot go outside. You can't do anything.
Yes. Fun fact, I don't have a driver's license in Spain, and I have a driver's license in the US because, I moved when I was 19. So in Spain, you cannot drive until you are 18. However, it is not that easy and that simple. It is very time consuming. You have to enroll to driving school, okay? Mandatory by law. And then you have to take however many hours with the driving instructor. Then you have your, theory test, and then you have the practical one. It is also super expensive. Like it can cost like $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 if you keep failing. So not many people have the driver license, but it's not also because of just the money. It's also because sometimes you don't need it. The public transportation is really good. We have subways, we have buses, even in Valencia, like you can connect, you can go from point A to point B just using public transportation. And so you don't really need it.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you really don't need it. As you were talking about LA, I was thinking, no, LA has terrible transportation. Like you gave it too much credit, girl. LA is bad, but New York is decent, right? Like cities like New York and Chicago, you can get around. But most of the US, you're right, there's such a strong driving culture where people feel like they cannot even exist without their car, which is still quite different from even Canada, But talking about Europe, of course, you can get around so easily within Europe, within Valencia, within any city in Spain, you have those options. So why would you need to drive, right? People walk more. And I think it's a healthier style of life, of course. The more you walk, the healthier you feel.
Absolutely.
And so you talk about the fact that in Spain, you would see your friends very often. Did you feel isolated in the US? Do you feel that sense of like, I wish I could be more social? Do you miss that at all?
Yes, definitely. I think the problem is that, or not the problem, but the first comparison is that most Spanish families, okay, for example, live in apartments. So if you want it or not, just by getting into the elevator, going downstairs and going to get some veggies, or going to the supermarket, going to the pharmacy, you're going to see a lot of people. You'll probably cross with a couple people on the elevator, downstairs, and probably your aunt, your friend from chat, with a lot of people just by going 100 meters away, right, to the grocery store. So you are in contact with adults and other people 24/7, right? You're going to go and drop off your kids at school. You're going to see a lot of people, whether here, most families live in houses, right? And houses are sometimes far away from each other, sometimes close, but you live in this bubble, right? Your house is your treasure, your comfort zone, right? And then you need to drive to get to places. So you're somehow a little bit isolated. You don't see as many people as if you were in Spain or Italy where you're walking all the time, right? So again, your social life is very limited, and that leads a little bit to isolation for sure, because it limits your interactions with your friends and other people.
Yeah. Have you had issues making friends in the US?
So I consider myself pretty lucky in that sense, but I was thinking about it and I was like, yeah, I am lucky, but I've also worked for it, right? Like one of my advices for people moving here, especially women and moms, is you have to put yourself out there. So if you, let's say you go, I don't know, you're part of the gym and the gym has childcare, or you go to a pool, or you go to a restaurant and you hear someone speak the same language, or maybe you have a kid that is 2 years old and you see a mom that maybe their kid is 2 years old too. Go and talk to them, like introduce yourself. You have to get out of your comfort zone and you have to put yourself out there. Also, for example, now here in Kansas, so the school that I take my kids, I go to a preschool, and I heard someone speak Spanish, and I was like, I'm going. Like, who is that chick, right? She was from Peru. And then we start talking, and she's like, hey, I have 2 other friends from Peru and a Mexican one. You should come join us next dinner. I'm in. You know what I mean? Like, if you invite me, I'm going to say yes. So you have to be, proactive sometimes too. So now I'm so excited I did that, because now I have a really group of, Latina friends. There's 4 Peruvians, 1 Mexican. It's me. It is so fun. And then, I also met some Spanish girls that live in Kansas City. We actually went last Saturday. It was 7 of us. We went to dinner, and then we went to a ballet, and it was about Don Quixote, which is, Spanish. And it was so fun. So, it's going to take a while, especially because as an adult, I think the hardest part is finding people with, the same values or similar values. If you're a parent, similar parenting style. So it is definitely harder making friends as an adult, but it's not impossible, My tip is you got to put yourself out there and not be afraid to make the first move if you see someone that you might click.
I love that. You're like, I came to the US, I made friends with a Mexican girl, with a Peruvian girl, with Spanish girls.
And Americans too. One of my best friends here is American. And it's funny because we were tailgating for a football game last year. And my best friend here, she lives about 3-4 minutes away. She's American. And so we went to the same pool. And we start talking, and I was like, I really like her. Like, we just vibe, There's some people that you just vibe. Some people you're like, oh, there's something I don't like about them. And some people you're like, oh my gosh. And it's funny because I was talking to her and I was like, who messaged each other first? We went through our Instagram DMs all the way. It took us like 15-20 minutes. And we went down, and it was me. I had a text like this, and I introduced myself. I don't even know how I found her on Instagram, but I found her. And the message was like, hey, like, this is Anna. We just, met each other at the pool. Our kids are like 5 months apart at that point. My oldest was 16 months old. If you'd like, tarari. And then we met up the next day, and, we have spent the last 4 spring breaks together with both families. And so I was like, I'm so proud. Like, I made the first move. I don't know if we would have gotten to that point if I didn't did that. So yeah, sometimes you just gotta do it. And again, sometimes it might work and sometimes it doesn't work. So, but if you don't try, you never know.
And I think the wonderful thing about Americans, they get a lot of hate, but the wonderful thing about them is, unlike countries like Sweden or Germany, people are still fairly open to meeting people from different countries. They want to know about you. They're open, they're friendly. And so I really like this part about the American culture, just the friendliness,
Yes, I agree. I think the Americans get a lot of hate for that too. And I'm not sure why. They might be loud, but they are really friendly. And especially in the Midwest, Midwesterners are so nice. You go to the grocery store and everyone is like, hi, do you need anything? Oh, I love your accent. Where are you from? Oh, my friend is from, you know what I mean? People are nice. And they are, in my opinion, they are super friendly. They are always opening the door for you. Definitely. I agree with you.
But wait, who is louder, Americans or Spaniards? That's the question.
I don't know. I'd say 50-50.
I think so too. They're on par.
Spanish people, it's funny because when I met my husband, and early in our relationship, which we're going to talk about it because it's super interesting, there are many times that he thought I was mad, and I wasn't mad. We Spanish people, we are as loud as Americans, I would say. I say 50-50, but we're also very straightforward. If you haven't met a Spanish abuela or a Spanish, older mom, they are very straightforward. They have no filter. So my mom, I think I got that from my mom. I'm a straightforward person. Okay. If I don't like something, I'm going to tell you. I'm not going to be mean about it, but I'm going to tell you, we're going to talk about it and we'll figure it out. Okay. But there's no need to be fake. And so he's like, there was once that we were in the kitchen. He goes, dude, relax. And I'm like, I'm relaxed. And it's funny because once he came to Spain for the first time, he met my family, we were sleeping at my parents' house. And I will remember always, he was at the kitchen and he was like, now I understand why you speak the way that you speak. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, your mom, your dad, I grew up, I have 6 siblings, guys. So my house was loud, you live in an apartment, 2 bathrooms. We're 7 siblings and 2 partners, like it's 9 people. So we were just very loud, Maria. And so he grew up with only 1 brother, no cousins at all. My husband doesn't have cousins. And so the way that we grew up is so different. My part is the loud part, like I have 13, we're 13 nieces and nephews. Our Christmas with my mom's side of the family, we're 40, we're 50. His Christmas, we're 4 people. So it is funny, right? Like once you go somewhere else, you're like, oh, now I understand why you act the way you act, how you speak, it is really interesting.
Yeah, and I love that. And also speaking of the loud, the one difference is Spanish people like to talk well into the morning. Like if you're sleeping in Spain, be prepared for the fact that people will party outside your window. I've had that happen multiple times all over Spain, and especially in the south, I think. But man, they're loud at night. It's like just,
They like to party. Yep.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so I'm very curious to talk about the dating scene in the US versus Spain. A lot of people are under the impression that Spanish people are very similar to Latin Americans. Very romantic, very conservative, very, want to get married. They want to sweep you off your feet, the Spanish men. And so I want to debunk that a little bit. And I know you have all the facts. So let's talk about the early stages of dating and maybe some things that you've noticed with your now husband as well.
Yeah, I will say the main difference that I see and the first thing that I noticed, with my now husband is Spain has more of a 50-50 mentality, whether in the US, the men are more, I would say more like, they act more like gentlemen, right? They usually pay for the first date. And most of the dates, I want to say, they get your coat, they open the door for you. And it's funny because I interviewed 2 high school exchange students from Spain. They actually are spending the year here in Kansas. They live 15 minutes away from me. And they came over, super sweet, and we were talking about their experience, right? Dating in high school. They both have American boyfriends now. And it's funny because they were like, hey, this month, I haven't spent more than $20. And they were thinking, and they're like, it's because their boyfriends pay for everything. And I'm like, that is very American. A Spanish man could never. So I would say the Spanish mentality is more 50-50. Like, hey, I work, you work, we're splitting the bill. Whether in America is more, I'll take it of you. Like I want to invite you, then I'm going to pay for it.
So on the first date in the US, is it more than formal versus, Spain? It's like, let's get a caña, let's get a beer, let's take a walk, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, in Spain is more, we can go for a walk or let's grab a beer, a glass of wine, right? As a first date type of thing. I think in America, it's a little bit more formal. But I want to say they do go. Yeah, I would say they go for like nicer dinners and things like that. But definitely they are more, American men think more about the, opening the door, pick you up at your house. I will always remember the first like official date with Matt, my husband. I remember he always picked me up at my house. He always dropped me off at my house. He didn't leave until I was inside my house, like making sure that I'm safe, paid for my first meals. And, I always offer to say no. Like my first thought was, I will always remember the first time he put my coat on. It was funny. We finished eating dinner and I'm about to grab my coat and he's like, no, let me do it. And in my head, I didn't think, oh, that's so sweet. I thought I can do it myself. Like I never had a man putting a coat on me or, like opening the door of the car for me to get in. I was like, what? I was confused, it's the truth. I wasn't like, oh, he's so sweet. I was like, what? Like I can do it myself. Like I can open the door, and then, you just understand that it's part of the culture. Obviously some men go that extra mile, to make you feel special, which I honestly love. And yeah, I thought, wow, what a gentleman, a Spanish guy could never. That was my first thought.
We're going to get a lot of people saying in the comments, well, your husband is probably from a region in the US that is very chivalrous. So maybe not all Americans are like that. But then again, compared to Spanish guys, it's still a lot more chivalrous, even if that doesn't involve putting on the coat on someone, because that is absolutely amazing, by the way. I think that's really beautiful and very old fashioned, but really chivalrous.
Yeah, and I have to say, he to this day he still does it. We got married in 2018, and it's funny because there are many times, we're finishing dinner, he puts the coat on and we go to the car and I go to my side, and many times he comes to my side. And to this day, the first thing that comes to my mind is, oh, I'm driving, like maybe he wants me to drive. And he goes, Anna, we've been together for so many years. I'm opening the door and I'm like, oh my God, you know what I mean? Like sometimes I even forget. But yeah, super sweet. Yeah, he is really sweet.
You're a very lucky woman, knock on wood, in Eastern European style, but also because your husband is very attractive. I've seen the photos. So an attractive man who is chivalrous, it's a really rare find these days. But also, a question that some people might ask is, well, if I go to Spain and I do that and a Spanish woman freaks out, because Spanish women are renowned for being, very strong feminists, very strong and independent women. Is it something that you would advise foreign men to try? Maybe not putting on the coat, but paying for a dinner, things like that.
Yeah, definitely. I think at the end of the day, whether, we think, I'm a strong woman, I can do this. Of course we can, right? But I think it's just super nice. I think that they will love it. And if someone feels uncomfortable, then, just say it, like, don't do this. I don't like it. Again, it's like I mentioned before, I think communication is key, but I do think that it is a nice gesture and I think it will be appreciated. Absolutely. Yeah. If you want to pay my meal, pay my meal.
I like the honesty. I also think though, like if you live in a place where that is not commonly done, you're going to appreciate it even more because you're like, I'm going out with all these Spanish guys. They haven't even paid for my drink. Like what a nice thing it is to have someone who is a gentleman, because I think every woman wants a gentleman. If someone is offended by that, well, then you can have a conversation about that. Right. But, and then, chivalry is one. I think you'd also mentioned there was like a casualness present in Spanish relationships that is not as present in American relationships. There's more of a focus on something more committed and serious.
Yes, definitely. I feel like Americans put a lot of pressure onto the marriage, dating and marriage. Again, I think their priority. And as I mentioned before, this is a circle, right? A vicious cycle. I think they see marriage as a part of being successful, right? So the earlier I get married, the earlier I have kids, it means that I'm successful, right? I have a well-established family from the outside. We're all perfect. Whether I would say Spanish women and Spanish couples, they focus more first on career, dating longer. Okay, it is very normal for Spanish couples to date 5, 6, 7 years, honestly, even more before getting married. So yeah, I do think the priorities are a little bit different. I still don't understand that, the obsession with getting married quick, because, the age, I think doesn't matter. Some people are more mature than others. But that like, I need to get married by 30, like that's a very American mentality. And I see it on social media too. Many videos of women saying my goal was to have 2 or 3 kids by the age of 30 and be done. And I was like, oh, wow. Like, honestly, I think the average age for the Spanish women to have their first kid right now, I believe it's 32 or 33. And I'm like, what? That is so different. That's when we, Spanish women start having kids. So definitely super different.
I wonder though, I think it's a great way to date for Spanish men, right? Because they're like, they can have a cake and eat it too. They can enjoy the, sleeping with someone, but then it doesn't have to lead to anything committed. And I think it works for a lot of women, but I think there's a certain age that you hit. Let's say you're 35 and you're like, I don't have 5 years to date someone casually, right? And so do you feel like it's impacted your friends a little bit in Spain, or are they happy with this arrangement?
I think that they are happy because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how old you are. If let's say if I was single and I was 35, the way I think is I'd rather get married later, but make sure that he's the one, than getting married at, 21 and then being divorced, by 23. So again, I think that making sure that you choose the right partner is way more important than getting married earlier. And you're not playing with fire, because again, you might get married at 20, or Utah, these states, Arizona, and they get married super young. Of course, they can spend the rest of their life together. It doesn't mean you're gonna get divorced because you get married, super early. No, absolutely not. But what I'm saying is that Spanish women don't mind waiting.
Yeah, I think my fear is that if I'm dating someone for like 7 years and he doesn't want anything committed, that at some point where he's just going to break up and I'm going to be alone, and then I'll have to start again from scratch, right? So I can imagine maybe with Spanish women, they don't mind it as much because they're just like, I'm fine on my own. If anything, I'll have a child on my own, And I know a lot of Spanish women do this as well. There are quite a lot of single mothers because they're like, screw this. I'm just going to take matters into my own hands. I'll have my own life.
Yeah, I feel like one thing that you mentioned is that, maybe they break up with you. The fact that you are not engaged or married after 7 years, it doesn't mean that you're not committed. Because a lot of my friends, have been dating their partners now for, 6-7 years, and they are so very much in love. They are committed. They do not have open relationships. So again, longer dating doesn't mean that they are not committed. It means that they are just not prepared for marriage, or that marriage is not their end goal right at this second. Also, weddings are very expensive. Spanish people don't make, as much money as Americans do. So it is very common to get married later on as well because of that, because it's very expensive right now, right? 2025, like life is expensive. And so I think that there's a lot of priorities before the wedding itself, if that makes sense. But again, that doesn't mean that they are not committed.
Yeah, I think this is key because it's not about the actual paper. It's more about the fact that you two are committed. So what you're saying is that it's not that Spanish people are not committed to each other. It's just that they're not in a rush, or they don't really see a need to get married.
Correct. 100%.
How long did it take you to get married to your husband?
Not a lot. I did get married young. I actually had my first kid at 25, which it is super young most of my friends in Spain, my group of friends. I was the first one getting married, first one having kids. And actually, one of my best friends, she got married last year. That's the second of my group friends. So 5 years later, actually 8 years later, before me of getting married. And then one of my friends just had, her first kid. But that's just 2 people out of maybe 15. So definitely not common. But I knew he was the one. So when you know.
Yeah. No, I think that's very interesting. And I think maybe if you had stayed back in Spain, your life would have been completely different. You probably wouldn't have gotten married, that. Yeah.
Yes, 100%. No doubt. I have no doubt.
Let's talk about motherhood in Spain. I'm very curious about this, as I said in the introduction, because when I saw your reel, I was like, I need to talk to this girl. This is interesting. This is mind blowing. And I kind of had an inkling because I know Spanish culture. I know the way that Spaniards approach things. So it made a lot of sense, but I thought it was a really, really interesting insight into both cultures. Let's talk about being a mother for you in the US. And some of the things that you've noticed.
Where do I even begin? There are so many things I can say. But yes, if you are listening to this and you haven't seen that video, I had a video go viral, millions, of views. It was published in many different, outlets. And I started that video with, I believe it was Get Ready With Me, while we talk about why being a mom in the US is more boring and isolating. And I think people were like, oh, let me listen, right? And what I talk about in this video is that being a mom in the US feels very isolated, mainly because there is no village, right? So we're going to talk a lot about community and why I think it's extremely important. But the thing with most American families is that their families live very far away. So again, let's go back to going to college. Again, see how it's a vicious cycle, okay? When you are 18, you move, and you might move in the other side of the country, from the age that you are 18, 19, that you move to college, you might see your family 2-3 times a year, right? Thanksgiving, Christmas, spring break, maybe you usually go with your friends. But again, it's very limited. So since a very young age, you move away from your family. And then Americans, I feel like they are constantly moving, like moving states for their jobs is very common. So first you move for college. After college, you're probably gonna move somewhere else because of their job. And maybe after 3 years, you get a promotion and you may move, to another state because you got another job. So moving within the US is extremely normal. But that means that when you find your partner and, you might get married, you have kids, your parents, your siblings, your cousins, they don't live near you. So you don't have that community, right? So that's one thing. So if you add this to not having mandatory maternity leave, paternity leave, having a really high cost of childcare and healthcare, you don't have the social life Monday through Friday. Okay. It's again, it all comes together. You have to schedule play dates weeks in advance, right? Like Americans are not spontaneous. You cannot be like, hey, Erin, do you want to meet up at 5 p.m. for a coffee? No, it does not exist. Okay. You cannot go to your friends and be like, I'm here. Okay. So there's not a socialization. There's no sense of community. There's no meeting at the playground after the school with other parents. So I think that, lacking family support, not having a lot of socialization within the week, or just, talking to another adults, driving everywhere is super inconvenient. Get the kids. I seriously dislike it. Every time I go somewhere, load the kids in the car, get them out of the car. Okay. You finish at the grocery store, load them in the car, get them out of the car. Okay. It's not like in Spain that you get them on the stroller and go. And maybe you see again, your aunt, you're always socializing with people, right? So again, that's why it can feel so isolating, because you are in your house, in this bubble, right? You're not in the apartment where you can go downstairs and see a ton of people. I think it's a mix of everything, and especially also the maternity leave. Most dads don't have time off. My husband was coaching the next day when I gave birth. So now you don't have family, but you also don't have your husband's support, which is crucial. And so I think moms here are exhausted because all of those reasons, right? They are always nonstop. And, most of them, the stay-at-home mom concept in the US is still very strong. I personally don't know any stay-at-home moms in Spain. Everyone, most women work. So even if you're a stay-at-home mom, you're with your kids 24/7 with no support. So that can feel boring, right? Like I need my girlfriends. I need a stimulation other than my kids, right? You can have fun with your kids. Absolutely. I love my kids. I have a ton of fun when I go, places, but I also need my girls' night out. I need other stimulation. So I think that's why, when you lack on all of these fields and you don't have that community, it is extremely hard to parent, because being a parent is freaking hard, right? Like you may have, my kids, I consider that my kids are pretty easy. They have, their health has been great since they were born. They are great sleepers. And still I can feel sometimes like I am missing these little things. So yeah, it can feel very isolated. And sometimes I'm like, okay, I'm ready for this and no one else is doing it. I'm like, okay, right? So it can feel also a little bit boring on that sense, but especially the lack of support.
So what you're saying is in Spain, when you give birth, you still continue being an individual that just has kids, but you continue your life. Whereas in the US, that becomes your sole identity. I'm a mom. That's it.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. I love this. I'm super passionate about this topic. So one of the main differences that I found is because of all of that we just talked about, right? That, let's say that lack of support, that lack of belonging, that puts a lot of pressure on American moms, right? When you become a mom, since you don't have those other things, right? That becomes your identity. I don't know if you've noticed, I talk about this on my social media because there was one day that I was like, why do American moms do this? if you realize you go to Target, you go to Walmart or wherever you go, and you see all of these t-shirts that says, girl mom, right? Baseball mom, soccer mom, social media, I always see videos that is like, this is my soccer mom outfit. Americans love labeling, especially in American moms, right? And I was thinking about it, I'm like, why do they do this? And I'm like, they do this because they feel like they finally belong to something. If you label things, if you make little groups, oh, I'm a girl mom, right? And if you go to the playground and there's another girl mom, you're going to relate to them, right? So you're going to feel like you belong somewhere, especially, sports. Again, the baseball mom, soccer mom, football mom. Now they are a community. So they finally found that community. And that is why the labeling, it is crucial in the US. There is absolutely no freaking way a Spanish mom would wear a sweater that says girl mom, soccer mom, baseball mom. And if you really think about it, it's like, why? Because they do have that community already. They don't have to rely on being a mom or a very specific type of mom to feel like they belong somewhere. Because moms in Spain, yes, you're a mom, but you're also a friend. And that's something that I try to apply in my life here in the US. I tell myself, hey, when I work on social media or I need a babysitter for 2 hours, I'm like, I'm not going to feel guilty because I like what I do. Doing this makes me happy, which means that I'm going to be a better mom, right? I'm going to come home and I'm going to be like, yes, I feel accomplished. But again, it's not just about the work. I'm also a wife. I like my day nights with my husband. I think that's super important, right? I'm also, again, a friend, a wife, a sister. So I think that Spanish moms have nailed that concept. Like, yes, you can be a mom, but you can still do other things that makes you happy, right? You don't have to say no to, being part of the running club. Just they figure it out. I also think that having the support of your partner, and having a more relaxed work-life balance definitely helps as well. So I think it's just a mix of little things that helps a Spanish mom to thrive more on motherhood. Whether I think American moms struggle more with that because again, lack of support, the social life part, I think is very limited. I think when you have kids here in the US, it's a lot of things. A lot of times, it's just my kids, and then it's 4 or 5 p.m. The day is over. They eat dinner and they don't leave the house. Whether we have a lot of social life after, between school and nighttime. So yeah, it's pretty interesting.
I think whenever you hyper focus on one thing, I'm not saying that kids are a thing, but whenever you hyper focus on one area in your life, that really kills a lot of areas in your life. And so if you hyper focus on your kids, a lot of marriages in the US suffer because of that, because now you're a mom. And as a mom, your sole priority are your kids, maybe not your husband. Maybe you don't feel as sexy anymore because you're wearing a t-shirt that says, soccer mom. It's not exactly... it doesn't make you feel like a woman. Now you're just a mom, right? You're not a woman, as you said. And
exactly.
That really hinder.
I love that you said that because it's like mom versus being a woman, which being a woman could be is one part of being a mom, right? But it's not your whole identity. Of course, my kids are the most important thing ever. But there's a lot of things that complement me, right? I'm not just a mom. Yes.
Yeah. And I wonder too, if American moms are so hyper-focused on their kids, when the kids do go off to college at 18, and then now at this point, they've lost a lot of their interest. I'm not saying everybody's like that, obviously, but when you hyper-focus on something like that, you really let go of a lot of areas of your life, which I think that you're onto something. I think that Spanish women have figured that part out, that they continue living and they're still satisfied with a lot of many areas of their life, and they have kids, and kids grow up learning that as well, that the life doesn't revolve around them, that that they can go to, and I don't know if Spanish people do this. I know in Argentina, it's very social. Like you can bring your kids to an event, to a gathering, and they can do whatever. They can fall asleep. Then you carry them home.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I think that unfortunately, how many Americans see kids, they see it as a burden or a little bit inconvenient, right? Like I don't see many kids at a restaurant at nighttime here, whether in Spain is very normal. And so, yeah, I think that also limits, right? Like if I'm not bringing my kid, then I'm going to stay home, right? But yeah, I think the most important thing is the community. But I think that Spanish women have mastered the art of, being the social part, right? Being more social, being, having more support. I think it comes back to the community part, right? They have support. If, they have a longer maternity leave. So I think by the time they go back to work, they are ready. Like they feel ready, they are not pushed to go back to work after 6 weeks. And so I think having that community is super important. And I always say, like, motherhood wasn't meant to do alone. It is, when you go to a play date with your best friends, and you're having a drink or maybe coffee, not even alcohol involved, but you're hanging out with your friends and the kids are playing, and then you look and you're like, oh my God, it's 8 p.m. It is so easy, right? Like, it is so fun. The time flies by, and that's because you're having fun. It is so much easier when you are parenting with other people, especially with your friends. It can be so fun. Whether here in the US, I don't see that happening much. So I think the community part is super crucial. And I love that we're talking about this because I saw an article the other day. I wrote it down here. It is called "Why Do Japanese People Live So Long? The Secrets Behind Japan's Longevity." And I wanted to mention because it is so interesting. If you check the countries, right, like ranked by life expectancy in 2025, there is a link that it's mind-blowing because you think about diet and, natural foods, but there's another part. So Japan is number 2 and Spain is number 9. Okay. The US is number 48. And the female life expectancy in Japan is 88.3 and the male is 81.99. Okay. In the US, female life expectancy is 82.11, which is a difference of, 6 years. That's a lot. Guess what was one of the main important points for Japanese people to live longer? Community. And in this article, which is again super interesting, it said family and community bonds. It said Japanese people often live in multi-generational households or close-knit communities. This support system reduces stress and provides emotional stability. And collectivism culture, it says Japan's collectivism society emphasizes cooperation, social harmony, and mutual support. This cultural mindset encourages people to work together and support each other. We can alleviate stress and improve quality of life. And then it talks about, strong social connections as well and how that impacts, having a healthy lifestyle and living longer. And I'm like, that just proves what we're talking, that parenting with other people, doing things that makes you happy, having that support, okay? Not just from your family, but the government, it just makes you so much happier, right? Just having that village and feeling like you belong somewhere and knowing that your family and the government has your back when you need it. Oh my gosh, it makes you not just happier, but as they proved in this, article, it makes you even healthier. And so
less stress. You're not stressed.
Exactly. And this also proves what I said about the labeling, right? It also proves that wanting to belong to a group or, having that community of, in this case, girl moms or soccer moms or, baseball moms, it makes you feel like you belong somewhere and it makes you happy. So you're proud of showing that you're a soccer mom. So, I think it's super interesting. And, I wish the community part here in the US was, a little bit better. And, I wish that, we have more maternity leave and paternity leave, those little things that would make American moms much happier and feel more supported.
Yeah. How have you managed with all of this? I mean, have you done anything to make this process a little bit easier?
Yeah, I would say when we talk about, the friendship, I'm a very, I think it depends of your personality. If you're an extrovert or an introvert, I consider myself an extrovert person. I love meeting people, especially like from all over. I love learning about, other cultures. I try to be as open-minded as possible. And that's, what I've been doing since I moved to the US. When we moved to Kansas, and, I have to start all over again. I didn't know anyone. When I saw my friend Erin at the pool, that we started talking, I was like, I really like her. I'm gonna, text her first and I'm going to make the first move. And now, again, we've been spending the 4 spring breaks together. So making the first move, if someone invites me to something, I'm going to go, right? Like you have to get out of your comfort zone, and do that. I also like organized events for, Spanish people in Kansas or, things like that. There was the European Soccer Cup. It was this past summer, and I organized an event for Spanish people in Kansas and Missouri to come, and 120 people came. It was amazing. We met up at a bar in downtown Kansas City. It was so much fun. I'm organizing right now a girls meetup in KC. We're going to be around 40 women, all from Spain. So, I think, again, I think I did a good job in terms of, okay, I know that I'm here alone. It is up to me if I want to be in the house doing nothing, or do I want to get a little bit out of my comfort zone, but put myself out there and create these friendships that are going to be super worth it and are going to make me happy. Because again, when I'm with my girlfriends, I actually have dinner with them today. We're going to do Wine Wednesday. We do it once a month. So things like that, right? Like I'm going to go. I thrive when I'm with my friends, and especially when you talk to other moms and when you create those strong connections, people are honest, right? So you're going to be like, hey, I'm struggling with this, or how are you doing? And we're like, no, how are you really doing? And when you can connect to other moms and be like, well, my kid is not sleeping good, chances are another mom is going to be like, my kid is not sleeping either. And you're like, oh, I'm not alone. You know what I mean? So yeah. I love that I established a really good group of friends. And that to me, it's been the best thing ever.
I think that's wonderful. I think it's also really great for your husband and for your kids that you're able to do this, because then you show up and you're not like, I've spent the whole day with the kids and it's like now you're competing over who's had it worse. Well, I was busy. I was working. Well, I was, then it's like a fight. But if you're satisfied in other areas of your life, then you come home and you're like re-energized and you feel like there's people around you and that, you have all these other things happening in your life, which I think is a lot of women and a lot of people need to get out there because they're so lonely, but they're so afraid to reach out to other people who also might be lonely, but they don't want to inconvenience other people. So everyone's stuck in this sitting at home and just feeling terrible about their lives. We all can use more connection, this is the part that I love about Spain is connection and social life. I think Spain really, really nailed this. And I've asked many people around the world about, the happiest countries. And I would often ask US versus Spain. And people tell me they think Spaniards are happier because of the social aspect that you just talked about.
Yeah, it is. It is just a chill lifestyle. People are not judging you, constantly, which I've seen that we haven't talked about this yet, but I find super interesting. I just feel like Spanish women, they don't care in the sense that, hey, you want to formula feed. You want to do, baby-led weaning instead of purees, go ahead. You want to breastfeed without a cover, go ahead. Whether here it's a little bit more, why are you bottle feeding? How are you, breastfeeding in public without a cover, right? So yes, definitely. I think Spain lifestyle is way more, laid back. Hey girl, you got to do your own thing. Do it. We're not going to judge you. And I just think in general, and what we're talking about our relationships too with, our partners and my husband, absolutely. I'm going to be happier when I do things that makes me happy. Right. And again, prioritizing, girls' night or like once a month meeting up with my girlfriends, or it doesn't need to be like dining and drinking. It could be going to ceramics and doing something, or, there's some days that we've done bracelets. So it could be simple things. But again, having that community is going to be life-changing. And that would be one of my advice. If, for someone that is moving to another country or coming to the US alone with kids, it is not impossible to thrive. Absolutely not. If I was unhappy here, I wouldn't be here. And I'm on year 11. So you can definitely achieve that happiness as well. It might take a little bit longer and you're going to be uncomfortable getting out of that, comfort zone, or even, meeting people from your culture. It's going to take some time. But once you find that, you can definitely do it and you can definitely thrive, Obviously, I wish that there was a little bit more support from, for example, the government. Again, I'm very passionate about the maternity leave thing, because having that support of your partner and you time to heal, it is, again, it's crucial for a mom, right? To feel back to her and feel ready. And it's so funny because I saw a video very recent, I think it was last week or earlier this week. It was, a politician, and it was a reel, and he came up and said, we need more babies in the US. We want more babies. And my first thought was, no, American moms don't need more babies. They need support for the babies they have. American moms need affordable childcare. They need affordable healthcare. They need a village. They need support. That's what they need, and
Yeah.
once they have that, I'll give you more babies. Right. So that was very interesting. I was like, does this person know how much does childcare cost? There's people paying $1,500, $2,000, $3,000 a month for a kid in daycare. How are you going to have more kids? Like, come on, it's 2025. Like, shit's expensive. So,
Yeah.
no, give me help, right? Give me affordable childcare and give me time to recover, and I'll have more kids. So, yeah, that was infuriating. But
Yeah, I have a question for you. I mean, now you go back to Spain once a year to visit your family. How has the US changed you? I mean, do you experience any of your culture shocks when you travel back?
yes, definitely. I say the basic culture shocks that I experience is pretty much like little things like the meal times, right? Like it's like noon and I'm starving and my mom is like, lunch is not until 2:30 p.m. There's little things like that, or the public transportation thing. Like I can get on a taxi and go from here to here for, €8. And it is super affordable. Same with the metro or the buses, little things that I do. But honestly, I think that I don't regret anything. I think the experience here has made me, the person that I am today. I made some mistakes, but I also learned so much. If we go back to the first thing we talked about, the winner mentality, honestly, if it wasn't for being here in the US and that winner mentality that I learned while I was in college running track, I don't think I would have been doing social media right now, or, some things that I've achieved. I don't think I would have done it because Americans have taught me you have to believe in yourself, because again, if you don't believe in yourself, who will? So the concept of hey, work hard, like you can do this, like believing in myself is changed me so much, right? Like that's another thing. If I can come to the US without knowing any English, without visiting prior the United States, back in 2013, if I can do that, and if I can become a mother abroad with no family around, because my husband's family is in Michigan, so it's like 12 hours away by car. I was like, if I can do those things, I can do anything. So it is made me definitely tougher. And yeah, like believe in myself. It sounds very cliche, right? But I don't think there's anything harder than that. So it's definitely super grateful for this opportunity. I personally really like living in the US. I think one of the best things that this country has is two things. One, that is extremely diverse. I don't think Europeans realize how big the US is. And every state feels like a different country. So, the 3 states that I've lived at have taught me something different. If you go to Texas, it's going to feel completely different than if you go to New York City. So I love that. You know what I mean? And yeah, the second thing is learning a new culture, a new language, meeting people from all over the world, and definitely being open-minded, because when you grow up at a place, you normalize things, right? And then you move somewhere new and you're like, oh, it doesn't mean that it's better or worse. That's the second thing I was going to say. I learned that one country is not better than the other. They're just different, and I'm super happy here so far. It's been a great experience. I think Americans, again, are super nice. The opportunities are endless. I feel like Spain right now for young people could be a little bit limited. Salaries are extremely low. Of course, has many good things. I think every country has good things and bad things. Right now, at the stage of life where we are at, if we put everything on a balance, we decided to stay in the US. Not sure about the future, right? We're open, but I think it's a great country. And just like any other country has bad things, absolutely. But it has also really good things.
Anna, what a wonderful ending to the podcast. I'm not going to add anything else.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your very honest and unfiltered opinion about your experience. I think it was really interesting. It will be very interesting for people that are listening or watching this, because you really pointed it out well, is that, neither one is good or bad, but it's also making the best out of your situation, right?
Yeah, so absolutely.
And you've managed to do that. And I think what a great cultural comparison for me, because I love Spain and I love the US. Like I like both countries, but for different reasons. And as I said, I love Spain for the social aspect. I love the US for a lot of things. I mean, US as you said, is a big country with a lot of things to offer. And so people hate on it a little bit too much. And that makes me a little bit sad because I do love Americans as people. There are some wonderful people living in the US, and there are a lot of things that are great that came out of the US as well. A lot of entrepreneurship, a lot of companies, a lot of really intelligent people, like smart people, right? So, anyways, on this note, I wanted to thank you for taking part in the podcast, and I'm going to link your socials below so people can come say hi. Maybe you can make new friends in Kansas. And guys, if you have any questions for Anna, please leave them in the podcast so maybe she can come and check them out. And Anna, thanks again.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure. Love sharing all my thoughts. And yeah, if, anyone has any questions, definitely reach out to me, via Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. I have my email also linked on all my social media. So if you have any questions about, whether it's Spain or you're moving to the US in a little bit with your family, any questions, feel free to send me a DM. And, hopefully this has helped some mom feel less alone in this journey. But yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks, Anna.
Bye-bye.
Hope you all enjoyed the podcast. If you made it all the way through, don't forget to subscribe on YouTube, follow on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you're watching or listening. Your support helps me bring in bigger guests and surprise you with even better episodes. Until next time.